Welcome to the Albemarle County Department of Elections Ballot Officer Training. We want to start this presentation talking about the purpose of the ballot officer. The Code of Virginia makes a point that we shall carefully count the ballots. So we're expected to keep careful track of the voted ballots, the unvoted ballots, the spoiled ballots, the provisional ballots, the unused, returned absentee ballots, and the absentee ballots in envelopes that have been dropped off. For many of these ballot counts, this responsibility falls to those officers of election who work as the ballot officer. The ballot officer controls the ballots. Ultimately, ballot officers can be anyone who is good at the job. But if you are trying to determine if you might be good at this job, or if you're trying to determine if an officer of election you know might be good at this job, then the kinds of characteristics that we look for in ballot officers are someone who is meticulous. They like things to line up and add up. They're good with simple math because you do have to do addition and subtraction. And they're good with logical thinking. And there's an example here. If you started with 1,000 ballots, those are in 10 100 ballot packs, and you gave 375 out to voters to vote on the scanner. You issued 20 to the same day registration and provisional officer, and then you had 5 spoiled ballots. Well, if you add those up, you should have 6 packs of 100 ballots remaining, because out of the first 1,000, you took 375 away and then 25 more, so 400 away. You have 600 left. That should be 6 packs. A good ballot officer is someone who will be able to see this, work out this little bit of math with a little bit of paper and pen, and know exactly how many packs of ballots should be left at the end of the day. This presentation will go through what it is to be a ballot officer, and it can seem very complicated, but really it is not. It can be a lot of fun. You get to interact with all the voters, or most of the voters. There are some details that you need to nail down, but once you learn those, you're just doing the same thing repeatedly in a very reliable way. And on-the-job exposure can turn a new ballot officer into an experienced one very quickly. Let's start with the ballot table. The ballot table should be located in such a way that you can see the voters coming to you from the check-in tables. Voters should not be allowed behind the ballot table, usually in their flow. The ballot table should have 2 chairs, pens for voters, a check-in slip collection bin, some ballots to issue, and the ballot tally sheet on it. If space permits in your polling place, it's great to have a table behind the ballot table where envelope 4, the ballot record report, extra counted and uncounted ballots may be kept. That can also be a handy place to count ballots sometimes. At the start of the day, the ballot officer needs to have some materials to get going. First, and sort of obviously, ballots. You should have ballots. These would be unvoted ballots. You should also have a count of the ballots that were issued to the precinct. This is on a letter that was given to the chief when he or she picked up their election day binder. You should have a copy of the ballot record report, or the ballot record report actually, not a copy. You should have envelope 4, which the chief has, and you should have the ballot tally sheet, which the chief should supply to you. You will also need to count some ballots. There are a lot of words on the next 2 slides to describe something that is really easy, so don't be dismayed. Ballots are delivered to the polling place inside the DS300 ballot bin, and they come in 1 or more boxes depending on the election and your precinct. Inside each box of ballots, the ballots are organized in plastic shrink-wrap packs of about 100 ballots each. Usually there are 100. Sometimes you get a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. Not a big deal. To count the ballots, first you open the pack of ballots, you count 10 ballots and place it on the table. Count 10 more ballots and stack it on the first pile of ballots at a 90-degree angle to the previous 10. And repeat step number 3 until all the ballots are counted from that pack. Note on the ballot record report how many ballots you counted from this pack. Occasionally you will get less than 100 ballots in a pack, or potentially even more. If that happens, double check your count. It's easy for ballots to stick together. And then don't worry about it. If you got 98 ballots, 98 is what it is, particularly if you counted it twice or if the other person working the ballot table with you counted it the second time. Unless you expect a very, very low turnout for an election, which would probably be a primary election for one party who was running a candidate for dog catcher. In other words, probably never. You want to start each day by counting out 2 packs of ballots into 2 separate stacks of 100 ballots each. When you exhaust the first stack, it's time to count or have another ballot officer count another pack of ballots. And that way you always have a pack of ballots more than you need to have on the table. Towards the end of the day, you get to play ballot counting roulette, where you try to guess whether you have to count one more pack before the polls close, or whether you can leave it uncounted. It's better to have counted unused pack of ballots than it is to run out of counted ballots. On the other hand, if you've only used 3 ballots in the current stack, so you've got 97 left, and it's 6:45, you probably don't need to count out another 100. That'll be up for the ballot officer to decide. One of the key pieces of documentation that the ballot officer maintains during Election Day is the ballot record report. You get this from the chief, and on the ballot record report, you enter the number of ballots you started with from the receipt for ballots that the chief has, and you count how many ballot packs that you have actually received to confirm. For each pack that you open, here's where you record the count of how many ballots that you got out of the pack, and also, when you finish issuing all those ballots, how many you issued. Obviously, for the very last pack that you count, you won't issue all of them, or you probably won't issue all of them. So you record how many you actually did issue. Also on this page, down at the bottom, you track spoiled and provisional ballots with tick marks in bundles of 5. So every time you have a spoiled ballot, you make a tick mark in the spoiled ballot box, and every time you give a provisional ballot to the SDR provisional officer, you make a tick mark in that one. You total things up at the end of the day, and then you give it to the chief, because this will be attached to statement of results number 1. Here's some more detail behind what we just covered. At the top of the page, you have these 4 questions. You fill in line 1 with the information from the receipt of ballots form that the chief has. You count the number of ballot packs to confirm. Just at this point in time, assume there are 100 ballots per pack. In the unusual case, where you get more ballots during the day, then you record that on line 2. Your express vote ballots are not really ballots until they are printed on by the express vote. Until then, they're just blank pieces of paper. But you note how many blank express vote sheets that you receive on line 3. And then on line 4, you add up all the ballots. Line 5 is the grand total of the ballots that you issued. It's not the total of ballots that were issued to you. So we already know we gave you 1,600 ballots, for example, at the beginning of the day. What we want to know back is that you issued 697 ballots during the day. And this should match what's on the ballot tally sheet. You also are tracking your spoiled and provisional ballots here. This is all at the bottom of the ballot record report. The ballot tally sheet is a tool that the Electoral Board recommends you use for tracking the ballots you issue during the day. If you already have a tool you use to do this, that's fine. The ballot tally sheet is a general purpose tool, and unless you have something better, I would use it. What this does is enables you to keep a count of how many ballots you have issued. By keeping a track of how many ballots you have issued on this sheet, every hour when the chief comes around to reconcile how things are going in the polling place, you'll be able to look down and immediately give him or her the number of ballots that you have issued. If you didn't have a ballot tally sheet, then you'd have to look at the ballot record report, see how many packs of ballots you'd opened and counted out, total up the number that you had issued so far, then look at how many ballots you had left on the table, subtract that from the number of ballots that were in the last pack, add all that together, and then you could tell the chief how many ballots you had issued. And you'd also have to tell the chief the number of spoiled ballots and provisional ballots. Keeping count of this on the ballot tally sheet just as you issue each ballot should make it easier to, at a glance, be able to say, how many ballots have we issued today? This is envelope 4. It's one of about 10 different numbered labeled things that the chief has to keep track of. Envelope 4 stays with the ballot officer during the day, and this is where you store spoiled ballots. And spoiled ballots are all marked spoiled and kept in here. You may fold them in half in addition, some places even staple them, but the key thing is that they've been marked spoiled across some portion of the ballot so that the scanner wouldn't accept it again even if they were presented. When a voter comes to the ballot table, this is the general process that you will use with the voter. This has left out saying nice things and smiling and all the social interaction aspects of the process. This is just the bare bones process. So first, the voter arrives at the ballot table. Second, the ballot officer takes the check-in slip from them and places it in the check-in slip container. The ballot officer then, third, marks the ballot tally sheet to account for the ballot being issued. The ballot officer, fourth, gives a pen and a ballot to the voter. Fifth, the ballot officer directs the voter to the marking booths. And then step 6, we go back to step 1 and we repeat the process for the very next voter. If you have more than one ballot style for this election in your polling place, you will be tracking them separately. They'll both have their own ballot record reports. You'll have tally sheets for each ballot style that you have. And in this case, it can be very handy to have one ballot officer issuing one style and another ballot officer issuing the other style. You don't have to do it that way, particularly if volume is low. You can keep track of it by one person. But it can be simpler if one person's doing one thing and another person's doing the other thing. If your stack, or when your stack of counted and stacked ballots run low, you have to count another stack. And from time to time, you need to recover pens from the DS300. Let's talk about something we don't talk about very often: running out of ballots. To be very clear, this is not supposed to happen. The registrar and the electoral board look at the ballot order hard to make sure there are plenty of ballots. Usually, way too many ballots are sent to your polling place. However, mistakes do happen sometimes. If you can project that you will have a problem, call the registrar's office. They have the ability to print more ballots. It's not a real fast process, but they can do it. So if it's 10 in the morning and you've used up half your ballots already, talk to the chief about making the call, because you're likely going to need more ballots before the end of the day. If you get to the end of the day and you just have the last few voters to go through and you run out of ballots, the last few voters can always vote using express vote ballots, which can function as an emergency ballot supply in a rare pinch. Express vote enables every voter to vote. We primarily use it for ADA voting purposes, but you don't have to have a disability to use the express vote. This technique has been used in polling places that ran out of ballots, and it works very well. It's 7 o'clock. It's the end of the day. And it's time to start closing down the polling place because all the voters have left. So at the end of the day, the voted ballots are removed from the DS300. The DS300 is set to start printing reports. And while that happens, the ballots that are in the ballot bin of the DS300 are taken out and placed in cardboard boxes that will be used to store the ballots. Several EOs usually help with this. And in this process, the ballots don't need to be counted again or sorted. They don't all have to be put face up or face down. They don't all have to be heads up or heads down. They do all have to be oriented the same way, so they'll lie flat in the box. The box will have a 3A label placed on its end and an inventory label placed on its top. Also on the top and over the edge towards the back will be 3 labels with the signatures of all the EOs placed. Doing so places these labels so that someone opening the box would damage one of the labels. If you need more than one box, they all get these labels. The box inventory sheet that goes on the top asks for a count of the number of ballots This is a count of the number of ballots in all the boxes. You will be trying to put your ballots in as few boxes as possible, but if you need more than one box, then the count you place here is the count of the number in all of the boxes, not just the box you are labeling. And this count can be taken from the public count on the DS300. You do not need to count the ballots in each box. Here is a picture of a box 3A with its end label saying box 3A on it, also with the date of the election and what precinct it came from, and that it's box number 1 of however many. On the top, you see the large label is the inventory label, and the 3 medium-sized labels have the signatures of all of the EOs on them, and they're placed across the box seam, so that if you were opening this box, at least from the top, you'd have to cut through one or more of these labels. As part of taking care with keeping count of the ballots, we also save the unvoted ballots. So again, at the end of the day, the unvoted ballots are placed in ballot boxes. The ballots that are still in packs should not be taken out of the packs. The unvoted ballots that have been taken out of packs just go into the ballot box. You don't have to do anything to kind of put them back in a pack. The unvoted ballot box will have a number 6 label placed on its end. On the top will be 3 labels with the signatures of 2 officers of election placed again so that someone opening the box would damage the label. If you need more than one box, they all get these same labels. The unused express vote blanks are not ballots because they haven't been printed on. No voter intent is on there. There's no race information. They're just blank sheets of paper. They can be used again in a future election and should not be included in box 6. They are returned in the envelope they came in. So we've taken you to the end of the day. Everything's signed, sealed, boxed up, taped up, taken care of. And now we're going to go back over what makes a good ballot officer. A good ballot officer controls their ballots. They know at all times how many they have, how many they have issued, and for what reasons they were issued. It's not unusual for one election officer to serve as a ballot officer all day. Even though we rotate people around from position to position, many precincts have found that they have one person who stays in the ballot officer job all or most of the day. But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be other ballot officers who work with them from time to time. The primary ballot officer should make sure that everyone who works the ballot table knows how to do all the parts of the job. And the last bit of advice that we would offer is never hurry doing the ballot officer job at the expense of doing the job right. You can always take the time to do it right. That is so much easier than at the end of the day trying to figure out why your count is off or where a pack of ballots went. Always take the time to do the job right. And thank you very much. This is a critical function in the polling place.